So, as these OTAs get underway, things get really interesting for specific teams with battles that will take place in training camp. And we can sit here and talk about wide receiver battles and safety battles and who's going to be the starting nose tackle. Those are all cute and it's fine. If you're a fan of that team, you're intrigued by every single positional battle that's going to be had this summer. But let's keep it a buck 50. It's always been about the QB, Shawty. Who else could it be? But me, Louie T. Welcome to the 166th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me on this lovely Friday afternoon. Gonna get in and out. You know how I like to do it on Fridays, especially if it's a non-flashback Friday. I don't like to hold you guys up, and I like to allow you to get your weekend started nice and early because that's what I'm trying to do. So we're going to get into the show today. Before we do that, though, I have a correction to make. So I was talking about Duke basketball on the last episode of the podcast, and I talked about how I was hurt. You know, I was shocked. I was taken aback by the news that Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, as he's affectionately known and called, was going to retire at the end of the next season. And I said that I knew this was coming. It was eventually going to happen. It was inevitable. And after Roy Williams called it quits, I said, man, it's getting close. It's getting early late, you know, or it's getting late early. And finally, the news came down that he was going to step down officially. And I talked about Jon Scheyer, his replacement. And I talked about how, oh my God, Jon Scheyer is the replacement, and they couldn't have found someone better on the bench. All the guys that have come through Durham, this is the best they've got. Yada, yada, yada. He can't be a master recruiter. I mean, look at the guy. He's crackers and milk and cheese. He's as plain Jane as it gets. And I said, I don't know if this guy has a different persona off the court or he's, you know, a guy that is able to reach these young, impressionable athletes or not. But he doesn't strike me as a guy that can do that. So I was talking to one of my buddies, and he's a massive Duke fan like myself, but he's a little bit more in tune and plugged into what's going on. He goes that extra mile. And we were having a conversation about Coach K announcing that next year was it. And we talked about, you know, Jon Scheyer being the next man up. And he was like, man, you know, there's been so much talk about who the next guy would be. And, you know, it's just good to finally get some clarity. And I'm like, you don't have a problem with it being Jon Scheyer? He's like, no, not at all. I'm like, it's Jon Scheyer, man. And he's like, let me tell you something. Jon Scheyer is the reason we've been getting all of these big-time athletes to come to Duke. And I'm like, come again? You know, I had the Scooby-Doo going for a second. He's like, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, all of these guys that have come through here the last 5 to 7 years. Yeah, Coach K was icing on the cake, but the guy that really heavily recruited them and the main reason they chose Duke over all these other programs, not just because it's Duke, obviously that's a big part of it, but the reason they were able to forge a relationship that led them to Durham was Jon Scheyer. And my jaw dropped, like, really? This is the guy. Sure enough, I went and did some homework. Turns out Jon Scheyer has really been the catalyst behind Duke getting a lot of these one-and-done athletes. Kyrie Irving swears by Jon Scheyer. You know, Jason Tatum swears by Jon Scheyer. We just recruited a kid that's going to be one of our best players in the upcoming season. And the first guy that he mentioned as to why he chose Duke wasn't Coach K. It was Jon Scheyer. And then he said Coach K. So I might have had it all wrong. I had it all wrong. Jon Scheyer might be the perfect man for the job. Now, I don't know what his coaching acumen is, but look, a lot of times in college basketball, what it really boils down to is who's got the guys, all right? Who's got the real hoopers out there? You can have a team full of four-year players and have the best coach in America, and he'll get the most out of those players if he's that good of a coach. But there's only so far those guys can take you when they meet hoopers that are going to be playing at the NBA level. Let's call a spade a spade. So I don't know how, because a lot of people like to come for Coach K's neck and say he's not as good an X and O's guy as a lot of these other coaches. But guess what? He has the superior talent 9 times out of 10, and that usually wins out. So if Scheyer is able to recruit those kinds of studs consistently, like he's been doing with Coach K at the helm, if he can do that for himself, we may be in good hands. We'll see, but that's good to know. Anyway, I digress. I just needed to start the show off with that and talk about, an error that I made in saying that Jon Scheyer, I didn't think was the right man for the job. Au contraire, my friend. So with that said, again, it's Friday. Don't want to keep you here longer than I need to. So let's get into the proceedings this evening, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Open you up. Thinking a little bit. So, I was taking a stroll around my social media timeline, and I ran into a couple of interesting tidbits from multiple different OTAs. And, the common theme was quarterbacks, obviously. Now, you run over Dallas's timeline, they don't have any, quarterback issues. They're excited to see their leader back under center and throwing passes. And the big buzz in Dallas right now is all about CeeDee Lamb and his year 2 development and how they think he's going to take the league by storm this year. We'll see. As you continue to scroll across different platforms and different timelines, you see different things. And one of the common threads with teams having battles was the quarterback position. And again, I'm a Washington fan. And so when I talk about Washington and I talk to other fans, we're talking about all kinds of different positional battles. What do you think is going to happen at receiver? How many are they going to keep? Who are going to be those guys? What do you think they're going to do at safety? That's a big one. Landon Collins coming back from injury. Man, Cameron Curl played so well last season. They just signed Bobby McCain. What are they going to do at safety? Man, we got 3 spots available on the offensive line. What are they going to do at left tackle? What about right tackle? What about left guard? Those things matter to Washington fans. If you're a fan of the Denver Broncos or the Chicago Bears or the Detroit Lions, you don't give a shit about Washington's left tackle position. But if you're a fan of the Denver Broncos, from afar, you might be like, damn, wonder who the Chicago Bears are going to start at quarterback. I wonder what the New England Patriots are going to do at quarterback. They got a situation over there. The quarterback position matters. It always has, it always will. It trumps every other position in the sport. And when we talk about positional battles, all those other positions are fine. Man, you need a field goal kicker and you got a kicking competition this summer. Awesome for you. Nobody cares. But you know what? A lot of people do care about the quarterback position. And there are 3 quarterback battles in particular that are really juicy and salacious this year. Not a ton of quarterback battles. For the most part, teams know exactly what they're going to do with the quarterback position, and they've got a guy at least penciled in going into camp. But there are 3 teams in particular that I think they know, but they really aren't sure, and we have no idea what they're going to do at the quarterback position. So I want to talk about those battles in particular here today and get your opinion on what you think is going to happen. We start in Denver. All right. The young upstart versus the cagey vet. And that's essentially how all of these battles look, except the rest of them are, it's the rookie versus the vet. Here you've got Drew Lock going into year number 3, and by all accounts, it's make or break time for Drew Lock. And Drew Lock's my guy. You know how I feel about Drew Lock. For those of you who don't, I think Drew Lock has immense talent. I wanted my team to select him in the 2019 NFL Draft. They decided to take Dwayne Haskins. How'd that work out for them? That's nor here nor there. A lot of teams weren't sold on Drew Lock. As a matter of fact, every team in the league passed on Drew Lock at least once. That's how he ended up in the second round and a member of the Denver Broncos. That said, I believe this guy has the talent to be a really good NFL quarterback. Now, I think he has to show that. The first thing he's going to have to do is stay healthy. That's been a bugaboo for him throughout his career, going back to his rookie season when he hurt his hand in training camp, or I think it was the preseason, and missed the first 9 or 10 games of his rookie season. Last year, they went out, did the Broncos, and they surrounded him with a plethora of weapons. His ex-teammate, Albert O, at the tight end position, not to mention Noah Fant was already there as a big weapon at the tight end position. They added Jerry Jeudy via the draft. They added KJ Hamler via the draft. Not to mention they already had Deshaun Hamilton. They already had Cortland Sutton. They had an abundance of riches out there for him. But Sutton got injured last year, barely played. Hamler was in and out of the lineup. He was banged up most of the season. Jerry Jeudy dropped the football a ton last season, and it was a mess in Denver. Really, it was offensively. But there's a ton of talent out there, and Drew Lock, if he can stay healthy, we saw flashes in his rookie season towards the end when he finished up the year, I think either 4-1 or 5-0. The guy can ball when he's dialed in, and there were games last year. Carolina comes to mind. The comeback versus the Chargers was another dandy of a performance. He's had his moments where he's been spectacular for the Denver Broncos, but he's been inconsistent. So they go out and they get Teddy Bridgewater as a guy to push him in camp, because let's face it, Vic Fangio is on his last leg in Denver. This is year 3 for him. They've had 2, subpar finishes, maybe 5-11, 6-10, type finishes, 7-9, somewhere in that general vicinity. Never been a threat to make the postseason, and it's been rough for Vic Fangio because he's a defensive-minded guy. They gave him a young quarterback to work with, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. The bottom line is, and they gave him a vet. I think year 1 was Case Keenum, if I'm not mistaken. But it's Case Keenum. I mean, what are we talking about here? Whatever the case may be. You look at this situation. They trade for Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater had a chance to really solidify the job in Carolina last year. And while he wasn't terrible, he was Teddy Bridgewater. I call him the Black Alex Smith. You know what you're getting. He's a game manager. He's a guy that's not going to lose you the game, but he's also not going to win you the game either. Well, with the type of defense Vic Fangio envisions being able to play with all of his players healthy, especially if Von Miller is right, and all of the moves they made in the secondary, remember, they went out, they signed Ronald Darby. In the surprise move, the Bears cut Kyle Fuller. They swooped him up on a 1-year deal, and not to mention, they also drafted rookie cornerback Patrick Surtain II out of Alabama. So they are loaded in the secondary. They've re-signed their big-time safety Justin Simmons. They're ready to go in the secondary. They got Von Miller. Now they got Bradley Chubb opposite of him, and hopefully they're both healthy and ready to rock and roll this year. The Broncos think they can make some noise defensively. Now it's about getting the right play out of the quarterback position. It's Drew Lock's job to lose going into camp. They're going to give him every opportunity to show them why they spent a second-round pick on him and why they believe he could be the future. And their new general manager, George Patton, has already come in and said, I love Drew Lock. I think this is the guy. If he didn't believe that, they would have drafted a quarterback at 9. Now, I don't know if they loved, Justin Fields or not, and they probably did. But he was available. They didn't have to trade up to get him. Mac Jones was sitting right there. If they really, truly felt like Drew Lock wasn't the guy, Teddy Bridgewater wasn't going to stop them from drafting a quarterback at 9. Drew Lock was the reason they elected not to draft a quarterback at 9. So they're going to give him every opportunity, but best believe the leash is very short this year because Vic Fangio isn't in the business of trying to prove that the organization was right in selecting Drew Lock in the second round, trading up to get him in the second round. He's interested in saving his job. And if Drew Lock gets out of the gates stumbling to a 1-2 start, don't think for 1 second that there will be any hesitation to put Teddy Bridgewater in there, have him manage the game, especially if the defense is barking. And those barks are turning into bites and they're out there getting after teams defensively. Don't think for 1 second that they won't hesitate to pull the trigger and put Teddy Bridgewater in the game because Vic Fangio will do it. So I think Drew Lock is on a short leash, but I think he's going to ultimately, if he's healthy, get the nod to start off the season and have a chance to solidify his standing within that organization as the franchise guy. And it's come to this where quarterbacks don't get 4 or 5 years like Alex Smith did once upon a time for the 49ers to prove himself. It took a while for Alex Smith to show why he was the number 1 pick overall in the draft. But that's not how the NFL operates anymore. You usually get 2 years to figure it out, and by that 3rd year, if there isn't immense growth, you're done. And so I think the last of the quarterbacks to get, a full 4 or 5 years to go after it was Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, those 2 quarterbacks from the 2015 draft. I don't think we're ever going to see quarterbacks get a full rookie contract to figure it out anymore. I think those days are long gone now. Those were the last 2, okay? Because we just saw Sam Darnold, and again, a lot of times too, accompanying quarterback changes are GM changes, coaching changes, and guys that didn't draft you. Just like in New York with the Jets. Sam Darnold, unfortunately, landed in a very tumultuous spot. Dysfunction and chaos reigned around him, and the guy that drafted him, Mike McCagnon, is no longer there. Joe Douglas is in New York with the Jets, and he's like, look, I love Sam Darnold as a dude. He's an awesome guy. I wish him nothing but the best, but I didn't draft him. He's not my guy. And while I would love to give him a chance with Robert Saleh, who I really believe in, I just hired him, we're going to go in a different direction, and I'm going to draft my guy at quarterback. That happens now. So instead of Sam Darnold getting another year or 2 in New York with the Jets to prove himself, he's got to do that in Carolina now. And it's probably best for both parties involved. So with Drew Lock, this is it. He didn't get it done in year 3. They're moving on. And whether it's a trade that, pushes him out of Denver or he's there hanging on for the last year of his deal, they don't pick up the 5th year option and he's gone. Whatever the case may be, we're going to know a lot about Drew Lock after this season. And I think Teddy Bridgewater was brought in as a safety net. If Drew Lock should fall off of the tightrope that he's going to be walking on this season, Teddy Bridgewater is going to be there to catch him and step into the game. And so I think this battle in Denver is already spoken for. I think Drew Lock, if he's healthy, he's going to be the guy. But we'll see what happens, because maybe Vic Fangio doesn't want to go into the season and allow him to struggle. If he feels like Drew Lock is struggling in camp, he may pull the trigger before the season even starts. And maybe Drew Lock's struggling in the preseason. Teddy Bridgewater is showing the ability to manage the game and keep them on schedule offensively. He's not turning it over. Maybe they just go with the veteran. Who knows? We'll see. I think Drew Lock is going to ultimately be your winner in that camp battle at the quarterback position for the Denver Broncos. You go to the Chicago Bears. The Bears. And it's Andy Dalton versus Nicholas Foles versus Justin Fields. And really, we can take that middleman out. He's just in the way. Nicholas Foles had his opportunity last year. He failed miserably. as he often does when he's tasked with being the starter and the guy, he's usually money off the bench. But when you tell Nicholas, it's your show, here's the keys to the car, and you dangle them in his face and you drop them in his hand, he doesn't know how to act. Usually he wrecks the car within minutes, and you're like, well, that didn't last long. It's really Andy Dalton versus the veteran, or the rookie. So it's rookie versus the vet, essentially Justin Fields, who the Bears traded up from 20 to 11 to snag, against Andy Dalton, who signed a 1-year, $10 million deal in the offseason. Honestly, I think the Bears are going to take it Usher style with Justin Fields. They're going to take it nice and slow with him. All right? I just don't see how he gets the nod right out of the gate. But as we've talked about here on the podcast, a lot of times with these young quarterbacks, teams rather see them early than late. No, he may not start week 1 or 2, but by week 3, I wouldn't be shocked if Justin Fields is out there if Andy Dalton's struggling. I still think Andy Dalton is actually a solid quarterback. I wouldn't want him starting for my team now. However, I think if the right weapons are around him and he's protected, I think Andy Dalton is still serviceable. I've always had a soft spot for Andy Dalton. Ever since he was drafted in the 2nd round out of TCU back in 2011, I've always had a soft spot for Andy Dalton. I've always felt like he was disrespected, not given enough credit for his ability in this league. But that was young Andy. That was Red Rifle Andy. This is now Andy Dalton in like year number 11, 10, 11, something like that. It's a little bit different now. Wasn't blown away by Andy in Dallas last year. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great either. That said, I think he gives the Bears an opportunity to bring Justin Fields along at a leisurely pace. Now, speaking of pace, Bears GM Ryan Pace may not have time to bring Justin Fields along at a leisurely pace. And maybe the head coach, Matt Nagy, does not either. It's strange because it's a weird dynamic in Chicago right now. You've got a GM and a head coach combination that have led the Bears to the postseason 2 out of the last 3 years. Yet, it feels murky in Chicago right now. Feels a little murky. Feels a little dirty. The waters feel a little choppy. Even though Mitchell Trubisky led the Bears to the playoffs twice, it still feels like, something's off here. So, I think what ultimately has to happen is that they have to show that they have Justin Fields' best interest at heart, and they've got to be able to show the organization that we're the best guys for the job to get the most out of him. We went up to draft him because we saw something in him that we think we can extract from him and unleash on the rest of the league. And you can't do that by having him sit on the bench. You can't show what this guy can do and why you're the best guys for the job, GM Ryan Pace, head coach Matt Nagy, of getting the most out of him. You can't show that if he's on the sidelines. So there is a dynamic there of not wanting to rush him, and wanting to take the process nice and slow. They just wanna take it nice and slow. Now, baby, tell me what you want to do with me. But at the same time, you also have to realize that if he doesn't play enough and he doesn't play well, it's an indictment on you. And if the team isn't winning, all the while he's not playing well, then why are you here? So, I think when it's all said and done, Andy Dalton gets the nod to start the season off. Much like I said with Drew Lock, I think his leash is going to be rather short as well. He may get the first 4 weeks to, show that, hey, I got this. And they need to come out of the gates no worse than 2-2, preferably 3-1, 4-0. But if they stumble out of the gates and they're 1-3 and Andy Dalton's playing subpar football or marginal ball, they could say, you know what, we can do this with the young fella and just turn him loose. I look at it similarly to a Tyrod Taylor, Baker Mayfield type of situation, even though Tyrod ended up getting injured, and that's how Baker Mayfield got on the field. I see it being a similar situation to that, or, similar to when Deshaun Watson was a rookie, and I think he didn't start the first 2 games of the season or something, but by week 3, he was the starter. Like, you let the veteran play, start off the season. If things go awry early, all right, Rook, you're up. Let's see what you got. His development in camp and in the preseason and his work ethic and study habits will dictate how quickly he gets on the field. Because just like we've seen with other quarterbacks, i.e. Dwayne Haskins in the past, who didn't know the plays, couldn't protect himself with getting the proper protection calls made at the line of scrimmage. If you can't do those things, then the offense can't function the way that it's supposed to. You can't even evaluate all the other players on the team and what they're doing, because the quarterback position is so important, as it essentially gets everybody lined up and put into the right situations. And if you can't set protections correctly and there are breakdowns in protection, it doesn't matter how badly Allen Robinson is breaking somebody off on the outside, he's not going to be able to get the football thrown to him. So Justin Fields, I think, is going to dictate how that quarterback competition really goes. If he is able to show early on in camp that, hey, I got a grasp of this offense and I'm ready to lead us, he could easily be the starter week 1. But I think they brought Andy Dalton here to be a bridge, not to be the guy that is on the bench week 1, but rather be playing early in the season. And if things go well, as long as things are going well, I think Justin Fields is going to be staved off on the sidelines. The minute things start to go sideways, I think that's when they make the call to the bullpen to go and get the young fella and bring him in. So I think Andy Dalton is going to ultimately be your starter week 1, but camp is going to tell the story along with the preseason, because a lot of people didn't think Russell Wilson was going to start week 1 for the Seattle Seahawks. Matt Flynn was given, much like Andy Dalton, Matt Flynn was given a nice sized contract. Unlike Dalton, Flynn's was a multi-year deal. Dalton's is just 1 year, so there is no long-term investment in Andy Dalton. He's just here as a stopgap, just here to keep the seat warm for Justin Fields. Meanwhile, in Seattle, back in 2012, Matt Flynn was supposed to be the guy. They gave him a multi-year deal to come in and be their starting quarterback. They drafted Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. He wowed them from day 1, was way better than Matt Flynn in the preseason, and they said, what are we doing here? Let's just start the young fella and get the process started right now. That could happen with Justin Fields. We will see. But I'm giving the nod to Andy Dalton right now. And then finally, the Patriots. New England has a quarterback battle brewing in camp. Cam Newton versus Michael McCormick Jones, a.k.a. the Mickety Mac. The Mickety Mac Daddy, Mac Jones. Now, here's the thing about this one. I think this one is a little bit more lopsided than the other 2 we just talked about. I think Cam Newton is firmly planted in the driver's seat here, and he literally has to crash the vehicle in order for Michael to get an opportunity. That said, Cam Newton reportedly today injured his hand. Now, I don't know the severity of it, but apparently he did something to his hand to which he stopped practicing and did not pick up a ball nor throw a ball the remainder of the day. So I don't know the severity of the injury. I don't know what he did, but I do know something happened today. It could be minor. It could be something really minor, nothing to really talk about in June. And by the time they get to training camp in July, he's ready to go and there's nothing, to talk about. But if he's healthy, Cam Newton's the starter, I think. I think it's only a matter of time. Now, I've already told you guys this. Unlike the other 2 battles that could easily be flipped before the season starts, Teddy Bridgewater could be your starter week 1 in Denver. Same thing for Justin Fields, even though I think it's highly unlikely that either one of those guys are starting. I think Drew Lock and Andy Dalton are going to be your respective starters in Denver and Chicago. However, it's a possibility that it could go either way. I think in New England, if Cam Newton's healthy, he's the unquestioned starter. But just like those other two situations, I think his leash is short. Remember how many times he was benched last year? Like, I know this for certain. Bill Belichick doesn't want to go through another season like he had last year, which is why they spent all the money they did in the offseason, and that's why they drafted a quarterback. They don't want to be 7-9 again, and they can't be 7-9 because there are 17 games in the upcoming season, but they don't want to be mediocre. They don't want to finish third in their division. They don't want to miss the postseason again. You don't think he was salty about the success Tom Brady had in Tampa Bay? He wants some get back. He wants to prove to everybody that it wasn't just Tom Brady that led him to all those Super Bowls, and that they are a good organization whether Tom Brady's there or not. He's been able to prove that in the past with Matt Cassell and other guys, and Jimmy Garoppolo when Brady was suspended for Deflategate. But that's a small sample size. He wants to prove that they have what it takes to get it done, sans Tom Brady. So Cam isn't going to be afforded, 6-7 games to struggle, and then they go to the youngster. If Mac Jones is showing the ability to process what Josh McDaniels is out there coaching up, and he's able to get in and out of the huddle, spit out verbiage, get everybody lined up, set protections, and they feel really comfortable about what he can do, even if they have to cut the playbook in half, even if they have to cut it down to a third of its size, they're going to do that and move on, because I've already said this. If there's one guy in the league that is extraordinary at being able to adapt to his surroundings and adapt to the team they're playing against that week and come up with a game plan that allows them to maximize the players that they have on their roster, it's Josh McDaniels. I don't love Josh McDaniels as a head coach, but damn it, as an offensive coordinator, he's special. So there's no doubt in my mind, if they got to put Mac Jones out there, he'll put together a game plan that Mac Jones is comfortable with. And it'll look vastly different. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. It'll look vastly different, night and day different, than the game plan he'll put together for Cam Newton. So I think Cam has to go out and he's got to show that he's still got the ability to get it done, because last year was a rough go of it for Cam Newton. It was embarrassing. And he talked about that this offseason. It was embarrassing. He said, I can't go out like that. So he's going to get a chance to rectify and atone for what was a really poor showing last year. But make no mistake about it. Much like Drew Lock in Denver, much like Andy Dalton in Chicago, there will be a quick hook if he struggles early out of the gate. If he's stumbling out of the blocks, trust and believe Mac Jones will be there waiting to take advantage of that opportunity. But I think of all these battles, Cam Newton, to me, if he's healthy, and obviously something happened today, don't know the severity of it. If he's healthy, to me, he's the clear-cut winner of that competition. Don't even know if it's a real competition at this point in New England. That one kind of feels more like what's going on in Washington, where, hey, we got a quarterback, an established veteran on a one-year deal that we brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's the unquestioned starter. There's a competition going on, but he's the starter right now. And barring some kind of catastrophe, he's going to be starting week 1. And the other guys know that. They still got to prepare themselves as if the opportunity is going to present itself, but they know they're competing for who's going to be number 2 on the depth chart. And I think that's the same thing that can be said for Mac Jones. He's competing more so for the second position at quarterback, because they have veterans on that team that could unseat him, and he could be the third quarterback if he's not ready. But I think those are going to be interesting camp battles to follow all offseason and into training camp. And always remember, it's always all about the quarterback, Shawty. Always. So we can talk about all these different, camp battles here and there. Oh man, what are they going to do at tight end? It's always about the quarterbacks at the end of the day. So got a super chat here. And it's from my guy, Door Gunner. Thank you for the super chat, Door Gunner. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Door Gunner writes, donating to singing lessons and showing respect to Ramon. Hashtag Mob Squad. Stand up. We in the building. Mob Squad, if you out there. Hashtag 2021 NFC East Champ. So you speaking that into existence already. I love it. I'll take the donations for singing lessons. I could use a vocal coach. I'm gonna tell you this right now. I used to could sing when I was a kid. Puberty hit and my voice was never the same, but pre-puberty, I actually had some pipes on me, man. I could blow a little bit, but after puberty hit, I was no more good. So I try my best, and it just depends on if I stay in my lane. When I try to hit an octave that I'm not comfortable in, that's when it gets a little dicey. You know, if I stay in my lane, I can do a little something, man. I could probably be a hell of a background singer. As long as the lead singer's got a voice, I probably can harmonize in the back. But hey, I'll take your donations. I need a vocal coach. So. And Ramon says, big ups. Appreciate you, as always. So with that said, let's go ahead. We'll take a quick break, get a word from one of our sponsors, and then we'll come back on the other side and jump into, in case you missed it, you are dialed in to the 166th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I'll see you on the other side. I want to take this time out to thank Manscaped for sponsoring the Louie T Network podcast. Manscaped has the right tools to get the job done quickly, safely, and hygienically. Father's Day is just around the corner, and you probably need a gift for your hairy dad. Make sure your dad is proud this year and get him and yourself the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 and Ultra Smooth package. You know what they say, like father, like son. The brand new Lawnmower 4.0 and Ultra Smooth package is perfect for you and the dad in your life to complete your grooming game. Let me give you a little bit more information on both of those outstanding products, starting first with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available in both the US and in Canada. So what makes this waterproof trimmer different from all the other trimmers? This 7,000 RPM trimmer features skin-safe technology to keep your balls in check and has helped reduce manscaping accidents around the globe. A new multifunctional on and off switch can engage a travel lock created for jet setters. The Lawnmower 4.0 gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Additional guard lengths with sizes 1 to 4 let you trim to your liking. Then you get to the Ultra Smooth package. Comes in 3 different steps to take care of your family jewels. Step number 1, the Crop Exfoliator. Infused with ingredients that can soothe, clear, and keep the skin on and around your groin feeling refreshed, reducing the risk of ingrown hairs by your delicacies. Gotta keep those guys nice and safe. Step number 2 is the Crop Gel. See where you're shaving with Manscaped's unique clear shaving gel just for your groin. And step 3, now it's time to clear out the bushes. Time to shave. The Crop Shaver now comes into play, which was designed for shaving the groin area with confidence. 3 precision blades, including extra wide lubricating strips and a pivoting head for the ultimate groin grooming experience. All 3 of these are vegan, which you know I love because I am vegan. Cruelty-free and sulfate-free products are included, so you know your manhood is in good hands. Stop imagining your dad has it covered because he probably doesn't. More likely than not, he probably doesn't, okay? Get 20% off plus free shipping when you use the promo code LouieT. That's 20% off plus free shipping when you use the promo code LouieT at manscaped.com. This is the perfect package for you and your dad's perfect package. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code LouieT at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com when you use the promo code LouieT. It's dad bod season. Time to get smooth. And trust me when I tell you this, your dad and your boss will thank you. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining me on the 166th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Real quick, if you haven't already done so, please take this time to hit the subscribe button for more great content here on the Louie T Network podcast, and on the Louie T Network, I should say, with the podcast, all the various shows that I'm doing, everything. Make sure that you turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. There are so many different things that I'm doing, whether it's live streams or it's unboxings for the CCS, whatever the case may be. Make sure you turn on that notification bell and hit the like button. If you enjoy this content, please hit the like button. Really do appreciate every single one of you out there. That said, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, wherever it may be, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Google Music Play, whatever it's called now, they change the name so often, Apple Podcasts, wherever, make sure you rate and review. 5 stars, preferably, and a great comment goes a long way in helping this podcast out. That said, got a super chat here that I want to read real quick before we get into In Case You Missed It. Daniel Rivas, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Daniel Rivas, who writes, "Hey Louie, just wanted to show some appreciation. Love the content. Keep up the good work." I thank you greatly for that. I really do appreciate you, Daniel. Thank you so much for your generosity. With that said, let's get into In Case You Missed It. So the Cowboys claim they aren't interested in trading linebacker Leighton Vander Esch, but all signs right now point to the Cowboys trading linebacker Leighton Vander Esch. So let's go in chronological order as to how we've gotten to this point. Leighton Vander Esch has only played in 19 of a possible 32 games over the last 2 seasons. He's dealt with some neck issues, and so he hasn't been as available as the Cowboys would like. Remember, starting out in 18, this guy was an absolute beast. He played in all 16 games. He looked like he had All-Pro written all over him. He was a Pro Bowl defender in that 2018 campaign. 19 is where the injuries started to take place. 20, he was banged up yet again. And so 19 games in the last 2 years out of a possible 32 contests. So that prompted the Cowboys to say, you know what? We like you, we don't love you. We're not picking up your 5th-year option, which was going to cost the Cowboys $9.1 million. So they don't pick up the 5th-year option on Leighton Vander Esch, which essentially means the upcoming 2021 season is his last in Dallas. He's going to be a free agent after the season, which then got people to thinking, don't pick up the 5th-year option. You're not going to get anything for him more likely than not in free agency if he leaves, unless he gets a massive deal, which he still could. He could have a breakout year, or not a breakout. He could have a big year this year and end up signing a massive deal elsewhere. Highly unlikely with his injury history, but you never know. And so it got people to thinking, maybe the Dallas Cowboys may move him. And that was amplified by the Cowboys' decision in the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft to select linebacker Micah Parsons, who is, to me and everybody else out there, the quintessential replacement for a Leighton Vander Esch type. So in looking at that, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, the Cowboys are adamant they're not looking to move Leighton Vander Esch. I don't know about that. I kind of want to call their bluff on this one. It seems a little fishy how they're going about things with him, and the drafting of Micah Parsons feels like them moving on from Leighton Vander Esch. And now again, he could just be a guy that they are able to lock in here so that when they transition away from Vander Esch, they've got a guy already and they're not going to feel the sting of losing him. But this feels like Dallas pretty much turning the page on Leighton Vander Esch, and they're ready to do that right now by going ahead and trying to get something for him instead of losing him in the offseason, and more likely than not getting nothing in return. We'll see how that goes. I don't know if there are any suitors out there looking for Leighton Vander Esch. Obviously, his injury history would diminish any real trade value. But it's, again, if you get a 6th round pick for Leighton Vander Esch, that's better than nothing, right? So I think the Cowboys are in a position right now where they're going to hold on to him and wait to see if some teams have some injury issues in camp and they need somebody. That's when the phone may start to ring and things may heat up. But as of right now, Leighton Vander Esch is still a member of the Dallas Cowboys, but that is a situation worth monitoring. In case you missed it, the Philadelphia Eagles, as we stay in the NFC East, claim to have suitors for tight end Zach Ertz, so they won't cut him. And we've talked about this Ertz situation and how it's been somewhat convoluted. He's staying away from OTAs right now. He wants nothing to do with this organization. He wanted a new deal last year. He wanted a new deal during the season. Nothing got done. The writing is on the wall. They're looking to do a new deal with Dallas Goedert, however. And so Zach Ertz, his best friend, is no longer there. He's ready to move on. I think the Eagles are ready to move on. And so something's going to come of this situation. There will be resolution at some point. The Eagles claim to have suitors, which is what you're supposed to do. You know, when everyone is wondering, what's the holdup? No one's trading for this guy. Cut him loose so we can have at him. The Eagles are like, no. We got teams interested. We got teams interested. We're just gonna hold on for a minute. I don't buy it. I don't think anybody's coming to save the Eagles in this situation. But I do think they're going to do the same thing I just said the Cowboys may be doing with Leighton Vander Esch, which is kind of hold on and slow play this situation. Hold on to Zach Ertz. Wait to see if there are any major tight end injuries in camp of a team that feels like they're competing for something major this year. And that could be the catalyst for the Eagles netting something by way of trade of Zach Ertz. If nothing is to come of that situation, they are going to release Zach Ertz. He is not playing for the Philadelphia Eagles this year. It sucks if you're Zach Ertz, because the faster you can get into somebody's camp, get your hands on the playbook, the faster you can get acclimated, establish a rapport with that quarterback, and really be in the swing of things and be able to hit the ground running start of the season, week 1. The longer the Eagles slow play this thing and kind of hold on to you and drag their feet, the harder it becomes for you to acclimate yourself into and integrate yourself into a new team. So it's a tough situation for Zach Ertz, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? In case you missed it, the Seattle Seahawks are emerging as front runners to land Julio Jones, the star Atlanta Falcons wide receiver that looks to be on the outs. We've already talked about Julio's statements on Undisputed over a week ago. We know that him and the Falcons are at an impasse. The Falcons want to recoup as much of that money that is owed to Julio Jones, and the only way to do that is to trade him. They've got a ton of cap space tied into Julio Jones, and they're strapped for cash. I told you all of the numbers for every single team in the league from a cap standpoint post June 1. The Falcons had the second least amount of cap space, only bested by the New Orleans Saints, but the Falcons were somewhere in that $540,000 range, and the Saints were somewhere in that $350K range in terms of cap space available. So the Falcons are hurting. They need as much cap relief as possible, and the easiest way for them to acquire that is to move on from Julio Jones. Seems like the asking price may be a little stiff. I don't blame the Falcons. You play hardball for as long as you're able to play hardball, similar to what the Jets did with Sam Darnold. You look to extract as much value out of that pick as possible. You hold on to it, and you wait until you realize this is the best we can do, and then you move. And so right now, they're trying to vet teams. They're trying to shake them down. They've already been in contact with the Titans. The Ravens have reached out. The Rams have checked in. The Chargers have checked in. There have been multiple teams interested. But again, the price seems to be a little steep. And rumor has it Julio wants more money. So if you trade for him, he wants new money. That's also a bit of a deterrent if you're a team trading for Julio. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But all of a sudden, the Seattle Seahawks, who we know aren't afraid to give up draft capital to get what they want. We've seen them do this in the past. Most recently, trading Jamal Adams or trading for Jamal Adams and giving up 2 first-round picks in the process. So they're not afraid to give up whatever it takes to get a guy that they feel like can help them get over the top. And they've done all of this remodeling around Russell Wilson. He spoke about how he was not pleased with some of the direction of the organization and what they've done to surround him with talent to help him win. This offseason, they've gone out of their way to appease their quarterback, as you should, when he's done so much for that organization. And they've gone out and traded for Gabe Jackson. They've acquired they drafted him a receiver in Dwayne Eskridge. They added another player. I can't think of who it is, but they've done a number of things to make Russell Wilson feel comfortable. This is another sign that they're still looking to bolster their roster. And if things break down with all the other teams and there aren't as many suitors for Julio Jones and everybody starts to back out, Seattle could end up getting him a lot cheaper than initially thought. So the Seahawks are emerging as a front runner. And Russell Wilson is really driving that home, like, hey, anything we can do to get better, let's do it. Could you imagine an offense that features DK Metcalf, Julio Jones, Tyler Lockett, and Dwayne Eskridge? Could you imagine that? Unbelievable. We'll see what happens with that situation, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on. In case you missed it, the Detroit Lions are interested in veteran running back Todd Gurley. He's an all true man, yeah, baby. Don't call him Gurley. He's an all true man. It's going to be interesting to see how they divvy up carries, however, if they do bring in Todd Gurley. Now, head coach Dan Campbell has already come out and said, look, this isn't an indictment on DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams. Remember, they signed Jamal Williams as a free agent away from Green Bay this offseason. They drafted DeAndre Swift a couple of years ago in the 2nd round. They drafted a 7th round running back this year in Jamar Jefferson. They've got a ton of running backs on that roster. Yet, they still would like to go and kick the tires potentially on Todd Gurley. And it seems like ultimately that's where he's going to end up. I want to see how they maneuver this. So word out on the street is they're going to have him be in the same role as Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson was for the Lions last year. He was a veteran there. He was a guy that got, anywhere from, 4 to 10 carries in any given game. If he had a hot hand and maybe an injury occurred somewhere, he may have had his workload upped a bit to maybe, 15 touches or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, he knew what his role was going to be. Back up, mop up carries, and DeAndre Swift still getting the bulk of the load. It'll be interesting to see how they play it, because at this point of his career, I think we all can agree that Todd Gurley is not what he once was, and he doesn't need to be getting the football 25 times a game, or even 20 for that matter. I think a good range for Todd Gurley at this point of his career is 15 or less touches a game, and probably even more so in the 8 to 12 range, to minimize his workload, but also maximize the carries and touches you do get out of Todd Gurley. Remember, he's still a very solid pass catcher out of the backfield as well. So that's an interesting move, because I like Jamal Williams. He's had some injury concerns in the past, but when he's healthy, he's a very formidable back in this league. You've got DeAndre Swift. You drafted Jamar Jefferson. I don't really see the need necessarily for Todd Gurley. And you're a young, rebuilding team. I don't really know how he fits in the grand scheme of things, other than maybe you want Todd Gurley to show the younger backs how to work. Maybe you want a veteran in there to be a calming influence, because outside of Jamal Williams, who's on his second deal, you got a bunch of guys on rookie contracts. They're all young there. So, maybe you want Gurley to rub off on them in that regard, but I just find it a little interesting. I think you got a stable of backs that's fine without a veteran taking away touches from some of the young guys, but we'll see what happens and if Todd Gurley ultimately lands in Detroit or not. And that's a great point by Captain Spartan, who says Brad Holmes, part of the Rams organization that drafted Gurley, also reunited with Goff. That all makes sense. And when you think about moves like these, similar to Michael Brockers, ending up in Detroit, these are all guys that Brad Holmes was a part of the process of drafting. Brockers, a former first-round pick. Goff, a former first-round pick. Gurley, former first-round pick. These are all guys that Brad Holmes was there and a part of the brain trust that selected those guys in Los Angeles / St. Louis as first-round picks. So he knows these guys intimately, and that's part of the reason why you can see him ending up in Detroit. And maybe it's because Brad Holmes is very, very he understands the value of a Todd Gurley in the locker room. That could be the case. Maybe not necessarily what he brings to the table as a back on the field anymore. More so, all right, veteran presence, young locker room. We're doing a rebuild here. We need as many quality veterans that can show these young guys how to work as possible. And maybe Gurley's one of those guys. We will see. In case you missed it, Danielle Hunter, a no-show at OTAs last week for the Minnesota Vikings. Not a big deal, right? They're voluntary. Who cares? I've talked about this with Washington fans about Chase Young not having been at any of the OTAs to this point. You don't worry about guys that are in tremendous shape. Danielle Hunter is one of those guys that's in fantastic shape. So you don't worry about him. He's not there. It's not a big deal until you start adding in all of the other factors. And then you start thinking, wait a minute. Oh, shit. So Danielle Hunter last year, going into the season, before he sustained the injury that would cost him his entire 2020 campaign, made it known to the Vikings organization that I need a pay raise. I need an upgrade. I need you to upgrade me. He, right now, is the 13th highest paid edge rusher / defensive end in all of the National Football League. Joey Bosa is currently the highest paid at $27 million per on annual average. Danielle Hunter right now is making right around $14.4 per year. However, Danielle Hunter, before the injury, was the fastest player in NFL history to 15 sacks after posting back-to-back, double-digit sack seasons. I think one year it was like 15 and a half. The next year it was 14 and a half. And just like that, the man was at 50 sacks in his first 4 seasons in the league. Vikings rewarded him with a massive deal the year before he went off for 15 and a half. And he looked up and he said, damn, I'm kind of low on the totem pole, man. He's got 2 years left on his deal now. But before, when he had 3 years left, he was like, hey, I think I need some more money, man. Now he's missed the whole season. He's told anybody that would listen, hey, man, I ain't showing up for any of these workouts. I need some more bread. Or as a wise man once said, I need more allowance, yodelay. Why? Because I do. A man needs some more bread. Why? Because he do. He need it. It's starting rumors that the Vikings may be interested in trading one of the best young pass rushers in the game. I don't think they're going to trade him. But the Vikings are not in the best cap situation to be giving Danielle Hunter more money. They got other guys they got to pay. Harrison Smith, could use a new contract. I think he's on the last year of his deal, if I'm not mistaken. Their young right tackle, Brian O'Neill, who has been outstanding since they drafted him out of Pitt. I think he's on the last year of his rookie deal. So they got money they got to spread around to other guys. Don't know if Danielle Hunter's in line for new money right now. Not when you got 2 years left on your deal that we just signed you to not too long ago. And you didn't play last year because you were injured. He didn't care about that. So that makes for some very interesting conversations. And I don't know. I think they're going to call this bluff. I don't know how serious Danielle Hunter is in sitting out. Again, the CBA says, no, not today. There's no more of this. Hey, you under contract, but I'm a push the envelope and I'm going to sit out of camp. That shit is dead. Dead, I tell you. Not unless you're making quarterback money. In that case, you can do whatever you like. Yeah, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. When you're making $30 million a year, you can sit out all you want. But when you're making 14, and look, these are relative numbers. I get it. It's still a lot of money, but it's $14.4 million. That ain't the same as $30 million. That don't hit the same. So I think he's gonna play ultimately. He may be frustrated, and maybe you get to a point next year when Kirk Cousins' contract comes off the books, more likely than not. You might be able to get to a point where you say, okay, all right, Danielle, you're back, you're healthy, you put up, 13.5 this year. We know what you're about. Let's talk turkey. But I don't see anything getting done, and I don't see the Vikings doing anything drastic. I think if they were to trade him, it would free up something like $16 million. That's enticing. But you know what's better than freeing up $16 million of cap space? Having one of the best young pass rushers in the league on your team. I'd take the young pass rusher over freeing up $16 million of cap space. That's just me personally. So, and I think the Vikings agree with that. I don't see him going anywhere. But you never know. Okay? He felt this way last year. It's a whole new year. He didn't play last year, so the Vikings are looking at him out of the side of their eye like, seriously, dude, you didn't even play last year? He's like, I don't give a shit about that. Y'all know what I'm about. So we'll see what happens there. That could turn into an old-fashioned stare down and a stare off. I don't think it's going to amount to much. But again, something worth keeping an eye on. As we transition into our final segment of the show, garbage time. Got a super chat before we transition into that. And this is from my guy, Alexander the Great. The Great! Alexander the Great, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Alexander the Great, right? Been a minute. Just showing some love, Lou. Everybody hit that like button. The LBEA is watching. Like Button Enforcement Agency. I love it, man. The LBEA is coming around and checking for all of y'all. Making sure you're hitting the like button. There are over 80 of you out there, only 42 likes. So don't make me sick the LBEA on you. Please hit the like button. Do the right thing. Hit the like button. Thank you for the super chat, Alexander the Great. Really do appreciate you. And thank you for the support. Indeed. Garbage time, real quick, before we get out of here. The USFL is planning on returning in the spring of 2022 with 8 teams. Another league that is trying to play spring football. How many of these have ended up in the spring football cemetery over the last, I don't know, let's call it 3 years? Let's see, you had the AAF, the American Alliance, Football League, whatever the hell it was called. You had the XFL, which actually, I don't think it was going to last regardless, but COVID hit and that shut it down, and then they filed bankruptcy. The Rock and some other people bought, the franchise, and I don't know what they're going to do with it, but that failed epically. I think right now we're in the midst of this fan-controlled football. How's that working out? That seems like that's destined for the trash can as well. So, I'd say that we've seen this before. It hasn't been highly successful in the past. I don't know if it's going to work now. I'm all for spring ball, and I'm not saying that I'm going to be an avid watcher, but I do think there needs to be another outlet for players that couldn't cut it in the league or just need an opportunity to play and get on the field to show their talents. You know, you always see, you know, guys that may slip through the cracks for whatever reason. Maybe they weren't mature enough when they were first drafted or whatever the case may be. And then football was taken from them and they realized just how important it was in their life. And they get their self together and now they get another opportunity. And you know, maybe you just need that exposure again. Whatever the case may be. You know, maybe you don't want to play college football. You know, a lot of these guys don't want to go to school, but they're talented. This could be another outlet for them to display their talents and get drafted, you know, into the NFL. So I'm all for spring ball, but somebody's got to figure this thing out. Like, we can't get into the third week and checks are bouncing and players aren't being paid and whole organizations are folding. Like, they got to get this shit right, man. And it's just amazing that we're just now hearing about the USFL trying to make this comeback. So for those of you not in the know, the USFL was once a prominent competitor to the NFL. From 1983 to 1985, the USFL was a real product, and the NFL felt threatened, okay? And if you haven't seen it, it's one of the best 30 for 30s that has ever been made. My favorite, I think, are the first two, the U episodes, and then Broke. And then after Broke, I think it might be the Small Potatoes, Who Killed the USFL, which it's Donald Trump. Spoiler alert, Donald Trump. Anyway, it's a great documentary. You should go check it out. But I don't think a lot of people understand just how big the USFL was. I mean, they had some big names and they were willing to spend. This wasn't some rinky-dink operation that had no chance that was going to be crushed by the NFL. They were getting some of the best players in football to jettison the NFL for the USFL. Or after they left college football, they were offering more money than the NFL was, and so they were going to the NFL, or USFL. Herschel Walker and Jim Kelly and Steve Young and Reggie White. You know, if you're a Washington fan, Gary Clark played in the USFL. There were so many talented players. Doug Flutie was in the USFL. That when they folded in 85, that first year, all of those guys went to the NFL. In 86, 15 of them ended up being either all pros or Pro Bowl players. It was a big talent pot in the USFL. Now, that's not what's going to happen this time. They got no chance. That's what they got of competing with the NFL. Nobody does. And the USFL actually sued the NFL back in the 80s for practices of monopoly. And they actually won. The problem is they spent $6 million on legal fees and only netted $3.5 million in the lawsuit. So it actually turned out to be a loss of $2.5 million. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is they're back like cooked crap. And they know how to do it. They know what the model looks like. Now, they're not competing against the NFL this time around. I've always said that if you're going to do spring football, it's in your best interest to try to partner up with the NFL. And the NFL is not looking for any partners, okay? They're not splitting the pie with anybody. However, use your platform to be a pipeline for the NFL. Have the NFL be able to pluck players away from your, and essentially use it as a farm system. You know? And that's what the spring ball should be. an opportunity for young guys, whether you bypass college altogether, let that be a showcase for teams that, hey, I didn't go to college, but I can play ball. Similar to what the G League and playing overseas has become for the NBA. I don't know if it's going to work. None of these have worked. So I'm very skeptical. But I'm willing to give it a shot. So I'm going to ask you guys. 2022 rolls around. USFL rolls out. Are you going to watch? More likely than not, the answer is yeah, I'm going to watch the first couple games. That first weekend it rolls out. And I probably need to come back and ask you maybe 2 weeks in. Are you still watching? Everybody watches initially. The inaugural week or the inaugural game, everybody watches that. I just want to see what it's about. And then you go, oh, okay, that's cool, that's cute. And then you don't turn it back on. We'll see. We don't know where these 8 teams are going to be located, but it's always in the best interest of these off-brand spring leagues to go where there aren't NFL teams. Tap into some of these college destinations and tap into these areas that are void of NFL teams that are starving to have a team to root for. Like one of the biggest teams that caught on in the XFL were the St. Louis Battlehawks. Why? Because the NFL left St. Louis for L.A. They were starving for some football content and a football team they could call their own, and it took off there. So that's the kind of market you're looking to tap into. Fox Sports is partnered up with the USFL. So they're going to broadcast the game. So they've got major backing already. That's half the battle. Part of the problem with the AAF was they had you surfing for CBS Network, CBS Sports Network. Like, who the hell knows what channel that is? You got to have some major backings. Fox Sports is major backing. It's not hard to find that on your television dial, So at least they've got a home. Now they got to put a product that is good enough to keep people interested in the spring months when there is no football going on. So we'll see. I just wanted to bring this up because it was just brought to my attention. They just announced and rolled out that they'll be relaunching the USFL in 2022. We'll come back and revisit this, down the road. And I'll ask you again when we get closer. Are you going to watch? And we'll see what happens. But I find it very interesting that yet another spring league is cropping up. And we'll see if they end up where the rest of these leagues have ended up. In the spring football cemetery. There's a ton of space out there, a lot of land, and a lot of tombstones already out there. We'll see if the USFL is able to avoid landing there or not. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, and the 166th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank every single one of you for joining me. If you haven't already done so, please do me a huge solid and hit the like button. Subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. There are 80 of you out there, only 55 likes. We can get it up to 60, at least 60 before we get out of here. So I want to thank all of my mods for all of your participation and support for this program. And really do appreciate what you guys do. Thank you so much for holding your man Louie T down. With that said, I'm going to glide to the side and allow all of you to get back to your regularly scheduled programming. Whatever you were doing before I interrupted your day, please, by all means, carry on. So with that said, enjoy your weekend. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me. Your man, Louie T, will be back on Monday for another installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if you are a card collector or you just like watching unboxing videos or you just want to support your man, Louie T, I've got more of those coming your way. I look forward to opening up more packs of cards. Until next time, you guys, take care, stay safe, and enjoy your weekend. Have a good one.